I learned the hard way that the worst betrayals do not come from strangers. When a stranger lies to me, I know where to place the pain. When a coworker takes credit for my work, I know what was taken. When a deal falls apart, I know I trusted the wrong person. Those things hurt. I do not deny that. But the pain is easier to understand when it comes from outside my life. The wound is different when it comes from inside my own home. It is different when the person hurting me knows my routines, knows my habits, knows what matters to me, and still makes the choice to break it. That kind of betrayal does not stay in one room. It spreads through everything. It changes how I sleep. It changes how I listen. It changes how I look at ordinary days. My name is Celeste. I am 29 years old at the beginning of this story, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia, in a 2-bedroom apartment with a narrow balcony, old carpet in the hallway, and a kitchen that never stays clean for more than 10 minutes. When I first moved in, the place felt small after what I had left behind. Now it feels honest. But this story does not begin in Atlanta. It begins in Northern California, in the version of my life that looked finished from the outside. I had a husband. I had a son. I had a strong job, a beautiful home, and a daily routine that felt solid enough to trust. I need to tell this carefully because I spent too long living inside other people's choices. When I tell it now, I want it clear. I grew up in Oakland with my mother, Loretta, and my younger sister, Candace. My mother believed in discipline the way some people believe in oxygen. In her mind, work came first, excuses came last, and education was the difference between surviving and building something stable. She pushed both of us hard. I understood her better when I got older, but when I was young, I mostly felt pressure. I was the older daughter by 6 years, and I acted like it. I did my homework without being chased. I kept lists. I planned ahead. I saved money early. I learned fast that praise came when I performed well. So I performed well. Candace was different. She was bright and funny and naturally easy with people. She could walk into a room and make it feel lighter without trying very hard. Where I was careful, she was quick. Where I held things in, she let them out. I loved her the way older sisters often do, with habit, with protectiveness, with the assumption that no matter how different we were still on the same side. That assumption cost me more than I knew. I earned a scholarship, studied computer science, and stayed in school long enough to move into data science. I liked systems. I liked order. I liked taking a mess of information and turning it into something useful. By the time I was 25, I had a strong job at a major tech company in Silicon Valley. I worked hard. I was good at what I did. I knew it. I also knew I stood out. I did not need anyone to tell me that being one of the few Black women in a large technical department meant I was seen before I was heard. I learned how to hold my ground without wasting words. I met Colton when I was 22. It happened at a medical fundraising event in Napa Valley. I had gone because a friend from school had an extra ticket and did not want to go alone. I almost skipped it. I had work the next morning and no interest in pretending to enjoy expensive food around people who liked hearing themselves talk. Then I met him. Colton was 28. Already deep into his surgical training, with calm hands and the kind of face people trusted quickly. He was attentive without seeming pushy. He listened well. He made eye contact. He asked questions and waited for answers. He made me feel chosen, and at that point in my life, I was still young enough to confuse that feeling with safety. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a quiet weekend when we were away for a short trip down the coast. I said yes because I loved him, because I believed he was steady, and because I thought I was choosing well. We got married a few months later at a vineyard in Sonoma. It was small by local standards and expensive by mine. My mother cried through half of it and kept squeezing my hand like she had done something right by raising me the way she did. At the time, I thought she had. By 26, I had a husband, a son, and a house in San Francisco with tall windows and a view of the bay from the back side of the living room. It was not the kind of life I grew up around. It was bigger, quieter, cleaner, more polished. Sometimes I stood in the kitchen after work and looked around just to prove to myself that I was really there. Miles was born that same year. I still remember how loud he was the first time I heard him cry. 7 pounds and 4 ounces, furious at being brought into the world, with a full head of dark hair and fists that stayed closed for weeks, like he had arrived already prepared to hold on. I loved him in a way I had not known was possible. Before Miles, I thought love was mostly feeling. After Miles, I understood love as responsibility, structure, protection, repetition, attention. It became the reason I cared how stable my life was. It became the reason everything mattered more. I went back to work after maternity leave, and that is when Dorothy entered our lives. Miles had just turned 1. I had posted an ad looking for someone reliable, warm, and experienced enough that I would not spend every hour at the office worrying. I interviewed several people before I met Dorothy. She walked in wearing a navy cardigan, soft shoes, and the expression of a woman who had seen enough in life to stop trying to impress anybody. She had retired after years as a school teacher in Savannah and moved west to be closer to a niece who had since relocated again. She said she did not want to sit still all day and liked children who asked too many questions. I hired her within 2 days. From the beginning, Dorothy felt bigger than the job I gave her. She did not fuss. She did not flatter. She paid attention. She learned Miles's routines, his moods, the foods he liked, the songs that calmed him down, and the exact point when he was tired enough to stop pretending he was fine. She also learned me. She noticed when I had skipped lunch. She noticed when I had worked too late too many nights in a row. She noticed when I walked in the door carrying tension in my shoulders before I said a single word. For 3 years, she became part of the shape of my life. She arrived early. She stayed until I got home. She kept Miles safe. She kept our days moving. She became the kind of person a working mother depends on so deeply that the dependence stops feeling like dependence and starts feeling like trust. That mattered later. Then there was Candace. By then, she was in her early 20s, fit, striking, and building a career as a personal trainer. She had clients, ambition, and the kind of confidence that made people turn toward her in public spaces. She came by often enough that Miles knew the sound of her voice before she reached the front door. She was his aunt. She brought him small toys, bright fruit, and loud affection. She borrowed things without asking enough, and returned almost none of them. She moved through my home like family, because she was. At least, that is what I believed. I gave Candace a key to the house the year Miles was born. I said it was for emergencies, but we both knew family keys are rarely only for emergencies. They become part of convenience. She used it to drop things off, water plants when we traveled, and let herself in if she arrived before I got home. I never questioned it. I never thought I needed to. From the outside, my life looked balanced. Good job. Good marriage. Beautiful child. Dependable help. Sister close by. Mother proud from a distance, even when her pride came wrapped in criticism half the time. I had no reason to think the floor under me was already giving way. The day everything changed was a Tuesday. It began like any other workday. I woke up early, got dressed, checked email before breakfast, kissed Miles on the forehead while he pushed cereal around his bowl, and grabbed my bag on my way out the door. Colton was in the kitchen pouring coffee. Dorothy was helping Miles find one shoe. Nothing looked wrong. That was the part that stayed with me longest. The way terrible things could sit inside an ordinary morning without changing its face. I was at my desk just after lunch, halfway through a long report, when my phone buzzed with a voice message from Dorothy. That alone was strange. Dorothy usually texted. If she called, it was because Miles was sick or something practical needed an answer right away. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. "Celeste," she said. Her voice stopped me immediately. It sounded thin, tight, unsteady. I heard her take a breath before she continued. "I need to see you today. Before you go home. There is a cafe on Fillmore Street with a blue awning. Can you meet me there at 4? She paused again. I could hear strain in her breathing. "Please do not tell Colton. I would not ask if it was not important." The message ended. I listened to it a second time, then a third. I stared at my screen, but I was no longer reading anything. My body had already understood something my mind had not caught up to yet. My hands felt cold. My jaw locked. My chest tightened in that sharp, quiet way it does before bad news fully takes shape. I texted her back. "I'll be there." For the next hour, I did not do any real work. I answered one email twice and still said nothing useful. I opened the same file 3 times. At one point, I looked down and realized I had been gripping a pen so hard my fingers hurt. I did not call Dorothy. I did not call home. I did not call Colton. At 3:30, I shut my laptop, told my assistant I had to leave early, and walked to the parking garage trying to keep my face neutral in case anyone looked too closely. The drive to Fillmore felt longer than it was. Every red light lasted too long. Every normal person on the sidewalk irritated me for reasons that had nothing to do with them. I wanted the world to either tell me what was wrong or stop acting calm. When I got there, I parked half a block away and sat in the car for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. I remember thinking one clear thought. Whatever Dorothy is about to say, my life is not going to look the same after I hear it. I got out of the car and walked toward the cafe. Dorothy was already inside, seated at a small corner table far from the front window. She had a cup of tea in front of her. She had not touched it. When she looked up and saw me, I knew this was going to be worse than I had prepared myself for. Her eyes were red, and she looked ashamed. I sat down across from Dorothy and placed my bag on the empty chair beside me. "Tell me what happened," I said. She looked at her hands first, then at the tea, then at me. "I should have told you sooner," she said quietly. "I know that. I have known for too long, and I am ashamed of that." A cold feeling moved through me. "What do you know?" She took a breath that did not steady her at all. "Most mornings, after you leave for work, Colton comes downstairs and gives me cash. Not every day, but often. He tells me to take Miles to the park, to the zoo, to get breakfast somewhere. He says not to rush back." I felt my body go still. "How long?" Her eyes filled again. "About 2 years." I did not interrupt her. I could not. I needed every word in the right order. She kept going. "I told myself I was protecting my job. I told myself I was staying because I needed the money. I told myself it was not my place to step into a marriage. I told myself many things, Celeste. None of them make me proud." My throat felt tight. "Who?" Dorothy looked directly at me then, and I saw pain on her face before I heard the name. "Candace." For a second, the room did not make sense. The cup in Dorothy's hand still existed. The chalkboard menu still hung above the counter. Somebody near the door laughed at something small and ordinary. The whole world kept moving with a steadiness that felt insulting. I heard the word. My mind refused to hold it. "My sister," I said, and it came out flat. Dorothy nodded once. "She lets herself in with a key." I looked down at the table because if I kept looking at Dorothy, I thought I might stop hearing her. "Did you see them?" "I saw her arrive. I saw her leave. I saw the pattern. I saw enough." "How often?" "Enough that I stopped believing it would end on its own." I sat back in my chair and folded my arms across my body, not because I was cold, but because I needed to hold myself still. Why now? Dorothy pressed her lips together before she answered. Because I cannot keep helping him do it, she said. And because I care about that little boy more than I care about my own comfort. Every time I buckle Miles into his car seat and drive away, I know exactly why I am being sent out. I cannot do it anymore. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Then I opened them. Thank you, I said. I meant it. The truth hurt, but the lie had already been hurting me without my knowledge. At least now I could see the shape of it. Dorothy started crying in earnest then, quietly and without trying to hide it. I am sorry, she said. I am deeply sorry. I reached across the table and took her hand. You are telling me now, I said. That matters. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then I asked the question that had already formed in my mind. Will he do it tomorrow? She hesitated. I do not know, but I think so. Then tomorrow I want you to do exactly what he tells you to do. Dorothy's eyes widened. Celeste. I need to see it myself, I said. Not because I doubt you. I do not. I need to remove every possible excuse from my own mind. She nodded slowly. I left the cafe with my face calm and my insides shaking. The drive home felt strange because I already knew what I would see when I opened the front door. Miles would be on the floor with toys. Colton would be relaxed. The house would look untouched. That was part of the lie, too. It had been built inside normal evenings, normal dinners, normal mornings, normal family conversations. When I got home, that was exactly what I found. Miles was on the living room rug with wooden blocks spread around him. Colton was in the kitchen stirring sauce on the stove. He turned when he heard me, smiled, and walked over to kiss my forehead like he had done 100 times before. How was your day? He asked. Busy, I said. He nodded and went back to the stove. I stood there for half a second and watched him. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not ask a single question. I ate dinner across from him and passed Miles his cup when he asked. I helped with bath time. I read one book about trucks and one about a bear who would not sleep. I tucked my son into bed and stood there looking at him for longer than usual. When I finally walked into my bedroom, Colton was already there, getting ready for bed. He looked up. You okay? Yes, I said. That was the biggest lie I had ever told. I barely slept. I spent the night thinking in clean steps. I needed proof. I needed a lawyer. I needed copies of financial records. I needed to protect my son. I needed to understand what I could do before I did anything emotional enough to be used against me later. By morning, I was tired but clear. I moved through the house exactly as I always did. Shower, clothes, hair, coffee I barely tasted. Miles at the table with cereal. Dorothy by the sink. Colton reading something on his phone. I kissed Miles on the head. See you tonight, baby. He nodded without looking up. I picked up my bag and keys. Colton glanced at me. Late day? Probably, I said. I have a deadline. He gave me the same easy look I had once mistaken for honesty. Try not to work too hard. I walked out without answering. I got into my car, pulled away, turned at the corner, and kept driving until the house was out of sight. Then I circled through side streets and parked 3 blocks away behind a delivery van. My hands were shaking. I turned off the engine and waited. I watched the time on the dashboard. At 8:21, I got out of the car and walked back toward my street. The morning was cool and gray. I crossed to the opposite sidewalk before I reached the house and stopped behind a parked SUV, where I could see the front door without being obvious. At 8:24, Dorothy came out holding Miles's hand. He wore his red jacket with the dinosaur patch on the sleeve. He was talking as they walked, swinging his free arm safe inside the shape of his little day. Dorothy did not look toward me. She buckled him into her car seat, got behind the wheel, and drove away. I waited. 9 minutes passed. Then I saw a silver sedan pull up. I knew that car. Candace stepped out wearing black leggings, white sneakers, and a fitted jacket zipped halfway up. She had her gym bag over one shoulder. She shut the driver's door with one hand, looked at her phone for half a second, then walked up the front steps like she had every right to be there. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a key, opened my front door, and went inside. I moved before I had time to feel afraid. I crossed the street fast, went up the front steps, unlocked the door with my own key, and stepped into my house as quietly as I could. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. I heard movement upstairs, then laughter. Low, familiar, comfortable. That sound did something to me that words never could. I took the stairs one by one, not because I was calm, but because I needed my body under control when I saw them. I did not want them to remember me falling apart. I wanted them to remember exactly what they had done and exactly who had witnessed it. Their bedroom door was partly open. My bedroom door. I pushed it wide. Colton was standing near the bed in a t-shirt and underwear. Candace was sitting on the edge of my mattress, one shoe off, her hair falling loose from the tie at the back. For one long second, nobody spoke. Candace stood up so fast she almost lost her balance. Celeste. I held up one hand. Neither of them moved. I looked at my bed first, then at Colton, then at my sister. I remember that clearly because I wanted to see it exactly as it was. No confusion, no doubt, no story they could later try to soften. "You let yourself into my house," I said to Candace. My voice sounded steady. I was glad. She started crying immediately. "It is not—" I cut her off. "Do not insult me." Colton took one step forward. "Celeste, listen to me." I turned to him. "No, you listen to me." He stopped. I could see panic on both of their faces now. Not remorse, not grief. Panic. They were not shocked by what they had done. They were shocked that I was standing there looking at them. I looked at Candace again. "How long?" She shook her head and covered her mouth with one hand. I asked again. "How long?" Colton answered this time, like he still thought he had the right to manage the room. "Celeste, let's sit down and talk about this." I laughed once, short and hard. "No." Then I looked at him and said it plainly. "How long?" His shoulders dropped a little. "A little over 2 years." Hearing him confirm it hurt more than I expected. Not because Dorothy had been wrong, because he said it so easily once he had no choice. Candace was crying harder now. "I never meant—" I turned to her so sharply she stopped talking. "I do not care what you meant," I said. "I care what you did." She looked down. I faced Colton again. "You sent my son out of this house," I said. "You paid Dorothy to take him away so you could bring my sister in here." He opened his mouth. I kept going. "You made my child part of your routine." His face changed then. That landed. Good. I stepped farther into the room, but not close to either of them. "I want both of you to hear me clearly," I said. "This marriage is over. This conversation is over. Neither of you is going to stand here and explain yourselves to me like I owe you patience." "Celeste," Colton said, voice breaking a little. "Please." "No." That word came out stronger than anything else I had said. I pointed toward the hallway. "Candace, leave my house now." She started shaking her head. "Please, let me talk to you." "Leave." She looked at Colton, then back at me, like one of us was supposed to rescue her from the situation she had created. Nobody did. I took my phone out of my bag and held it in my hand. "If you are still in this room in 10 seconds, I will call the police and report that you entered my home with a key I no longer gave you permission to use." That moved her. She grabbed her bag from the floor and rushed past me, crying as she went. I stepped aside without touching her. I heard her shoes hit the stairs. Then the front door opened and slammed shut. The room got very quiet after that. Colton stood where he was, pale and breathing too fast. I looked around once more. My side of the bed, his side of the bed. The chair in the corner where I dropped my clothes at night. The framed picture of me and Miles on the dresser. Then I looked at my husband. I want copies of every financial account by this evening, I said. Banking, mortgage, retirement, investment accounts, everything. He stared at me. I kept going. If I have to go find it myself, I will, and I promise you that process will be much worse for you than this one. Celeste, I am sorry. I believed he was sorry, I knew. I did not believe that was the same thing as remorse. I am calling a lawyer today, I said. You will speak to me through legal channels about the house and through agreed channels about Miles. You will not come near him until I have decided what is safe and appropriate. He rubbed one hand over his face. Please do not do this in anger. That was the moment I understood how little he knew me. I looked him straight in the eye. I am not angry, I said. I am finished. I walked past him into the closet, took one overnight bag off the shelf, and started filling it with what Miles and I would need for the next couple of days. He stood behind me, saying my name more than once. I did not answer. I took clothes for my son, clothes for myself, my laptop, my passport, birth certificates, insurance cards, a folder with records I kept in the top drawer, the small stuffed elephant Miles slept with every night. When I zipped the bag closed, Colton said the only thing that made me stop moving. Are you taking Miles? I turned around slowly. Yes, I said. I am his mother. He looked stunned that I would leave that house with my child. I was stunned that he thought I might not. I love him, he said. I believed that too, but love without judgment can still do damage. Then start acting in ways that make him safer, I said. I carried the bag downstairs, put it by the front door, and called Dorothy. She answered on the first ring. I saw her leave. She said quietly. Bring Miles to the park on Lake Street, I told her. Stay there until I get there. I will. I hung up, picked up the bag, and walked out of the house I had trusted more than I should have. My hands were steady by then. My heart was not. I found Dorothy and Miles near the far side of the park, close to the swings. Miles was trying to climb something that was too tall for him. Dorothy stood beside him with one hand half raised, ready to catch him if he slipped, but not interfering before she needed to. That sight almost broke me, not because anything was wrong there, because everything was still right there. My son was safe. Dorothy was steady. The sky was gray. A dog barked somewhere behind me. A stroller rolled past. The world kept going while mine had split open, and for a few seconds I could not decide if that felt comforting or cruel. Miles saw me first. Mommy! He ran toward me with both arms open. I bent down and held him tight, pressing my face into his jacket for 1 second longer than usual before I let go. You came early, he said. I did. Can we get a snack? Yes. He took my hand immediately, satisfied with the answer. Children can accept a changed day if the next small thing still makes sense. Dorothy looked at me over his head. I nodded once. She understood. We walked to a bench, and I gave Miles crackers from my bag while Dorothy sat beside me. She kept her voice low. Are you all right? No, I said, but I am clear. That was the truth. I did not tell her everything right there because Miles was close enough to hear us if he stopped focusing on his snack. I only said what mattered in that moment. I saw them. I confronted them. I am leaving with Miles. Dorothy inhaled slowly. Do you have somewhere to go? Yes, I said. For now. That answer was only half true when I gave it. What I had was a short list and a good mind under pressure. By the time Miles finished his snack, I had made 3 decisions. First, I would not spend another night in that house. Second, I would hire the best family attorney I could afford. Third, I would move fast enough that nobody had time to turn my shock into confusion. I drove us to a hotel that afternoon instead of going home. A clean business hotel near downtown where no one knew me and no one asked questions as long as my card worked. Miles thought it was an adventure. He bounced once on the bed and asked if he could watch cartoons. I let him. Dorothy sat in the chair by the window while I made calls from the bathroom with the door mostly closed. I called a lawyer first. Not a friend's cousin, not a general office. A real family lawyer with a strong reputation, the kind of woman whose assistant asked sharp questions before she offered me an appointment. Her name was Margaret Levin, and she had an opening the next morning because another client had canceled. I took it. Then I called my job, said there was an urgent family matter, and told them I would be unavailable for 2 days. Then I called the bank and changed passwords. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember. Dates, patterns, names, the cash to Dorothy, the key, the 2-year timeline, the confrontation in the bedroom. Every detail I could write down while it was still clean in my mind. At some point, Dorothy knocked softly on the bathroom door and opened it just enough to hand me a cup of water. "You need this," she said. I took it. That first night in the hotel, I slept with Miles beside me because he asked to, and because I needed his breathing in the room. I did not sleep much. The next morning, I sat in Margaret Levin's office wearing yesterday's calm like armor. She was in her 50s, precise, and not interested in wasting time on speeches. I appreciated that immediately. After I finished explaining the situation, she folded her hands and asked the questions that mattered. "Do you want divorce?" "Yes." "Do you want the house?" "No." "Do you want primary custody?" "Yes." "Do you have evidence of the affair?" "Yes." "Did your sister have regular access to the home?" "Yes." "Did your husband arrange for your child to be removed from the home to facilitate the affair?" "Yes." That was the first time I said it in a legal office, plainly and without shaking. Margaret leaned back in her chair. "That matters," she said. "Not because infidelity itself always changes custody arrangements, but because involving childcare routines in deception raises serious judgment concerns." I felt something in me settle when she said that. Not relief. Direction. By the end of the meeting, we had a plan. Temporary separation, immediate filing, structured communication, no private negotiations, documentation for everything, temporary custody terms, supervised contact at first, pending formal agreements and review. Margaret's office sent the first legal notice that same afternoon. When Colton started calling, I did not answer. When Candace called from a number I almost did not recognize, I blocked it. When my mother called that evening, I did answer. That was a mistake, but I did not know it yet. "Celeste," Loretta said. "What is going on? Colton called me." "Of course he did." I kept my voice flat. "What did he tell you?" "That he made a terrible mistake. That you took Miles and left. That you are refusing to talk to him." I stared at the hotel wall while she spoke. Then he left out the part where he was sleeping with Candace in my house for 2 years. Silence. A sharp inhale. Then, "No." "Yes." "No." She would not. I saw them. Another silence. This one longer. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. "Celeste, listen to me carefully. Do not do anything rash." I closed my eyes. "I have already hired a lawyer." "I mean with your sister." "There is no with my sister." "Families break under pressure," she said. "People do foolish things. That does not mean you burn everything down." I pulled the phone away from my ear for 1 second and looked at it like it belonged to somebody else. Then I put it back. "You think this is pressure?" I think you have a child, she said sharply. And I think public scandal helps nobody. That sentence told me everything I needed to know. Not because she approved, because her first instinct was order, image, control. Not me. Not what had been done to me. Not what had been done around my son. I spoke slowly so there would be no confusion. If your concern is how this looks, then we have nothing to discuss tonight. Celeste, I mean that. I ended the call. Then I sat on the bathroom floor of that hotel room and stared at the tile for a long time. Dorothy found me there 20 minutes later. She did not ask me to explain. She only sat down beside me, knees cracking slightly as she lowered herself, and waited until I spoke first. My mother is worried about scandal, I said. Dorothy nodded once, like that answer fit a pattern she had already suspected. I am sorry, she said. I laughed without humor. That makes 2 women who owe me that today. Dorothy turned her head and looked at me directly. I owe you more than that, she said, and I intend to pay it by standing where I should have stood sooner. That was one of the only things said to me in those first days that reached all the way through the noise. I looked at her. Will you help me? I asked. Yes, she said. There was no hesitation in it. Not a pause, not a condition, not a speech. Just, yes. Everything after that moved quickly. Colton's lawyer responded. Margaret answered. Temporary terms were drafted. Colton was furious about supervised contact until Margaret made clear exactly how a judge might view his choices. His tone changed after that. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to explain. He wanted one private meeting. I declined all of it. I did not need closure from the man who created the damage. I needed structure. The house went on the market within weeks. I agreed because I no longer wanted any legal or emotional tie to it if I could avoid one. A house can be beautiful and still be ruined for me. I took what was mine. I took what belonged to Miles. I left the marble counters and the bay view behind without looking back. The larger decision came 3 weeks later. My company, trying to be helpful, offered me options. I could remain in California and transfer to a smaller team. I could take extended leave. Or I could accept an opening in Atlanta with one of our partner analytics firms, a move that would come with a lower title at first but more flexibility and a clean start. I looked at a map that night in the hotel room after Miles fell asleep. California had too many eyes on me now. Too many roads I had driven with Colton. Too many places where memory would arrive before I was ready. Oakland held my mother. San Francisco held the marriage. The whole region felt crowded with history I did not want pressing on my son while I tried to build a different life. Atlanta was not home. That was part of the appeal. I had been there only twice, both for work. It was warmer, greener, and large enough to let me disappear a little while I rebuilt. It offered distance without isolation. It offered a job. It offered room. I accepted the transfer the next morning. When I told Dorothy, she looked at me for a few seconds without speaking. Then she said, "If you want me to come with you, I will." I stared at her. "You would do that?" "Yes." "You would leave California for me and Miles?" "I would leave California for a child who needs steady ground," she said, "and for a woman who should not have to rebuild alone." I cried then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, with one hand over my mouth because Miles was asleep in the next bed, and I did not want him waking up to my grief. That was how the next stage of my life began. Not with a speech, with logistics, flights, records, documents, preschool transfer, new apartment search, budget revisions, movers for what little I still wanted. Boxes, signatures, more signatures. Candace never spoke to me directly again. She sent 2 long messages through email, both blocked by Margaret before I ever saw them in full. Margaret summarized them for me in one sentence. She says she loves you and did not mean to hurt you. I almost laughed. Some sentences do not improve by hearing the whole version. My mother did not call again before I left California. That silence hurt, but it simplified things. By the time our plane lifted off, I had one suitcase, one sleeping child leaning against my side, one woman across the aisle who had chosen loyalty late but fully, and one clear understanding that my old life was over. I did not know yet whether the new one would be good. I only knew it would be mine. Atlanta met me without ceremony. When we landed, the air felt heavier than California air, warmer too, even in the evening. By the time I unlocked the apartment door in Old Fourth Ward the next day, I was carrying a tired child, a shoulder bag full of papers, and the kind of exhaustion that settles behind the eyes. The apartment was plain. The balcony faced a parking lot and a thin line of trees. The kitchen counter had a chip near the sink. The bathroom faucet dripped unless I twisted it hard. The hallway carpet was the color of oatmeal. But the place had one quality that mattered more than any finish. It had no history attached to my pain. Miles walked into the smaller bedroom and looked around at the empty floor. "Where are my dinosaurs?" he asked. "In the car," I said. "And my elephant?" "In your backpack." He nodded, satisfied, and moved on to the next problem. That was how children survive change. They accept what is in front of them if the next answer makes sense. Dorothy went straight into work mode. She found the kitchen, checked the cabinets, opened the refrigerator, and made a list before I had even put my bag down. "That boy needs dinner," she said, "and you need food that is not hotel food." I smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks. The first days were not emotional in any dramatic way. They were practical. I found a preschool 3 blocks away with a small playground and teachers who spoke to children like they were people, not noise. I transferred medical records. I updated bank information. I learned where to buy groceries, where to get coffee, where to park, where not to park, and how long it took to get anywhere if traffic decided to punish me. My new job started 9 days after we arrived. Avum Analytics occupied a converted warehouse in Midtown with exposed brick walls, too many plants, and open desks that looked nicer in photographs than they felt after 6 hours of meetings. The company was smaller than the one I had left, but the work mattered. We built systems for hospital networks, tools that helped identify patterns early enough for staff to act before small problems became larger ones. On my first morning, Priya Chandrasekaran, the founder, sat across from me in a glass-walled room and got directly to the point. "I hired you because I need somebody who builds stable systems," she said. "I do not need another person who can only patch visible problems." "I can do that," I said. "I know," she replied. That was enough introduction for me. I liked her immediately. Work gave me structure during hours when my mind might have otherwise turned against me. Data is useful that way. It demands attention. It punishes vagueness. It rewards precision. During the day, I could think about models, patterns, timelines, and implementation. I could solve things with edges. At night, life became softer and harder at the same time. Miles started asking about Colton during our second week in Atlanta, not in a way that suggested panic, just curiosity. "Where is Daddy?" he asked while I washed his hair. "Daddy lives in San Francisco," I said. "Why?" "Because Mommy and Daddy live in different homes now." He pushed water with both hands and thought about that. "Does Daddy still have a bathtub?" "Yes." "Is it bigger than this one?" "Probably." He accepted that answer and asked for a towel. That is one of the hardest things about being the adult in a child's life. They can move on from a painful subject in 10 seconds, and I still have to stay there and carry the full weight of it alone. The temporary arrangement became more formal within a few months. Colton received regular phone contact with Miles and supervised in-person visitation under terms Margaret negotiated. He disliked every part of it. I did not care. His dislike did not outweigh my son's need for safety, structure, and proof that adult decisions would no longer be made carelessly around him. He called once a week. Most of the calls were ordinary. Miles talked about preschool, crayons, a friend who bit people, and a squirrel near our building that he had named Captain. I stayed nearby while he talked, close enough to hear his tone and far enough to give him space. Once, after a Wednesday call, Colton asked to speak to me. I took the phone and waited. "How are you?" he asked. "I am fine." "How is Atlanta?" "Manageable." A pause. "I miss him." "You will see him next month." Another pause. Then he tried to move the conversation where he wanted it. "I wish we could talk privately." "We are talking now. You know what I mean?" "Yes," I said, and the answer is still no. I handed the phone back to Miles for a last goodbye and ended the call when the time was up. I did not hate Colton. That surprised me. I thought I would, but hate is heavy, loud, and demanding. What I felt was cleaner than hate. I did not trust him. I did not respect his judgment. I did not want him close enough to shape my life again. That was all. Candace never called. Not once. My mother stayed silent too, and that silence settled inside me in a different way. Betrayal from a husband is one kind of pain. The failure of the people who raised me is another. One hurts the heart. The other rearranges old foundations. Dorothy filled the apartment with routine before grief could take up too much room. She woke early, made oatmeal with sliced bananas for Miles, packed lunches, kept the refrigerator full, and learned the neighborhood faster than I did. She treated order like medicine, and for me, it was. 2 months after we arrived, Miles fell at preschool and split the skin above his eyebrow on the corner of a low shelf. I was stuck in a client presentation I could not leave. Dorothy got the call, went straight there, sat with him through 4 stitches, and brought him home with a butterfly bandage and 2 lollipops. When I got back that evening, Miles was proud of the bandage. "Grandma Dot took me," he said. Dorothy went very still for half a second. So did I. Then she smiled and touched his cheek. "You were brave," she said. I did not correct him. I had learned enough by then to know that family is not secured by blood alone. Family is built by consistency, restraint, sacrifice, and the steady act of showing up again and again without asking for applause. Months passed. The apartment stopped feeling temporary. Miles learned the walk to preschool. I learned which grocery store had better produce and which one charged too much for everything. Dorothy found a Thursday morning knitting group that met in a neighborhood community room, and although I never went in with her, I was glad she had something of her own. She needed a life beyond helping me survive mine. At work, I became valuable quickly. Priya trusted me with larger projects, then larger teams, then the kinds of meetings where everyone arrives with opinions and expects the person leading the room to separate what matters from what only sounds important. I liked that work. I liked being good at something no one could take from me. Around the 5-month mark, I got a text from a number I did not recognize. "Celeste, it's your mother. I changed my number. I would like to talk. I would like to see Miles. Please call when you are ready." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put the phone down and did nothing. A week later, I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Celeste." Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. That did not make me soften immediately. "You said you wanted to talk," I said. "So talk." She took a breath. "I handled everything badly," she said. "I am not asking you to forget that. I am asking for a chance to see Miles." I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the parking lot below the balcony. Why would I trust you? She was quiet for a second. You should not trust me quickly, she said. But he is my grandson, and I love him. That answer was not enough, but it was at least honest enough to continue. So we started carefully. Short calls at first, then video calls with Miles beside me, then 2 visits in Atlanta in public places only, not as punishment, but because I needed neutral ground while I decided what was possible and what was not. I watched my mother read to my son in a park and understood something difficult. People can love a child and still fail his mother badly. Both can be true at once. I did not let her close quickly. I did not hand her easy forgiveness. I let contact exist where it could be observed, measured, and tested over time. That was all she had earned. At 8 months in Atlanta, a second layer of my life began to settle. The first layer was survival. The second was ownership. I was no longer just getting through each week. I was building one. I had work that respected my mind. I had a child who laughed easily again. I had a home that, while modest, felt stable. I had Dorothy, who had become the quiet center of our daily life in ways I could never fully repay. And then, not long after that, my assistant buzzed my desk phone one Thursday morning. "Celeste," she said carefully, "there is a man here to see you. No appointment. He says his name is Colton." My hands stopped moving over the keyboard. Outside my office window, a magnolia tree in the courtyard was in bloom, bright against the brick. I took one breath. Then I said, "Send him in." The door opened. Colton stepped into my office, and I saw immediately that life had not treated him gently since I left. He looked thinner, less polished. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was longer than he used to wear it. There were shadows under his eyes that suggested more than one bad night. He stopped just inside the doorway, as if he understood he no longer belonged wherever I was. "Hello, Celeste," he said. I stayed behind my desk. "Hello, Colton. Why are you here?" He swallowed. "It's over," he said. "Candace and I are done." I watched his face and felt nothing sudden. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just confirmation. People who start in lies usually have to keep living inside them. "I am sorry things are difficult," I said. "But that is not a reason to show up here uninvited." He looked down for a moment, then back at me. "I needed to say this in person." "Then say it." He nodded slowly. "She moved out 2 months ago," he said. "She took the baby. We are trying to sort out custody." I had known there was a baby from legal updates and one reluctant conversation with my mother. Hearing it from him did not change anything for me except the shape of the tragedy. Another child had now been added to the damage created by adults who wanted pleasure without cost. Colton rubbed one hand over the back of his neck. "It's been bad," he said. "Constant fighting, accusations, no trust, no peace." I said nothing. He looked at me as if waiting for some sign of softness. He got none. "I know I have no right to ask anything from you," he said. "But I need you to know that I understand what I threw away." I held his gaze. "Do you?" His face tightened. "Yes." I believed he understood loss. I was less certain he understood character. He took one step farther into the office, then stopped. "I want another chance," he said. And there it was. Not grief. Not accountability alone. Desire. He wanted a door I had already closed. I looked at Colton across my desk and understood, in a very calm way, that this moment mattered less than he thought it did. Not because it was small, because I was no longer standing where he had left me. He took another breath. "I know I do not deserve it," he said. "I know what I did. I know I destroyed our marriage, but I am asking anyway. If there is any part of you that thinks we could rebuild something, I will do whatever it takes. I leaned back slightly in my chair and studied his face. Months earlier, hearing those words might have broken me in a different direction. They might have pulled me into memory, into comparison, into the trap of imagining what could have been if he had become honest sooner. But that was not where I lived anymore. So I answered him plainly. You are too late. He looked down, then back up. Please do not say that like there is no room for anything. There is not. His jaw tightened. I am in therapy, he said quickly. I am trying to fix what is wrong with me. I am dealing with my life. I am trying to become better. I hope you do, I said. But that work is for you. It is not a ticket back into my life. He stared at me for a second, like he had not expected me to be that clear. Then he tried one last time. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I did not smile. You knew that when you were paying Dorothy to take Miles out of the house. That hit him. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped. I kept my voice even. You did not make one bad choice, Colton. You made a long series of selfish decisions. You lied to me in my own home. You involved my child in your routine. You used my trust like it belonged to you. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to argue with one part of that, but there was nothing he could remove from it without lying again. I am not saying this to punish you, I continued. I am saying it because I need you to hear the truth without soft language around it. I am not rebuilding anything with you. There is no version of my future that includes me trusting you again. He looked exhausted. Not angry, not dramatic. Just emptied out. Miles still needs his father, I said. That has not changed. If you want to be better, then be better where it matters. Be consistent. Be careful. Be honest. Keep your word. Show up for him in ways he can rely on. He nodded slowly. I was not finished. But you and I are over, I said. Not temporarily, not emotionally, completely. The office went quiet. I could hear a printer down the hall, somebody laughing faintly in another room, the hum of the air conditioner. Normal sounds, useful sounds, the kind that reminded me life does not pause for anyone's regret. Colton looked at me for a long moment. Then he asked, Are you happy? It was such a simple question that I almost dismissed it. But I answered, I am building a life I do not have to doubt, I said. That is enough for me. His face changed at that. Not because the words were cruel, because they were final. He gave one small nod, turned, and walked to the door. His hand paused on the handle for half a second, like part of him still expected me to stop him. I did not. He left. The door shut behind him with a soft click. I sat still for a few seconds after that, not because I missed him, but because I could feel the last part of something old leave my body. It was not dramatic. It was not sudden. It felt more like setting down a weight I had carried so long I had forgotten what my own posture was supposed to feel like. Then I turned back to my screen and finished the work I had been doing before he arrived. That evening, I got home later than usual. When I opened the apartment door, I smelled biscuits before I saw anything else. Dorothy was in the kitchen, sliding a tray onto the stove. Miles sat at the table talking too fast about a painting he had made at school. There was yellow paint on one sleeve of his shirt and butter on his chin. Mommy, he said. Mine had a truck and a tree and a dog, but the dog looked wrong. Did the truck look right? I asked. Yes. Then you are improving. He accepted that immediately. Dorothy looked over at me, read my face in one glance, and went back to the biscuits. How was work? She asked. Productive. That was enough. She did not press. I washed my hands, sat down at the table, and listened to my son explain in detail why the dog had failed, but the tree had gone well. In the middle of that conversation, I looked around the apartment. The chipped counter, the old carpet, Dorothy moving between stove and sink. My son talking with complete seriousness about paint. The narrow space between the table and the wall. The noise from another apartment faint through the vent. Nothing about it was polished. Everything about it was real. This was my family now. Not the family I was born into. Not the family I married into. The family that stayed. Work continued to grow. Priya promoted me twice over the next year. The team got bigger. The responsibility increased. I was tired often, but it was the clean kind of tired. The kind that comes from carrying things I had chosen on purpose. By then, Miles was 5 years old. He had been asking for a bicycle for months by then, and one Saturday I bought him a blue one with training wheels and a bell. I bought it because he had earned a little more independence, because I could afford it, and because I liked saying yes when yes made sense. That afternoon, Dorothy and I sat on a bench near the building while Miles rode uneven circles on the sidewalk and rang the bell every 15 seconds. He nearly tipped once, caught himself, kept going. I watched him and felt something quiet move through me. For a long time, I had measured progress by what no longer hurt. That was not the right measurement. The better one was this: how much of my life now belongs to the present? The answer was growing. Not long after that, I met Andre. It happened on a Saturday when Dorothy took Miles to a children's museum and insisted I spend a few hours outside the apartment. "Go walk somewhere," she said. "Buy yourself something unnecessary." I ended up at Pont City Market, wandering without purpose until the smell of grilled spice and something rich pulled me toward a food stall with a simple sign over it. Andre's. The man behind the counter was tall, dark-skinned, broad-shouldered, and focused on the food in front of him with complete attention. His sleeves were rolled up, and there were small pale scars across one forearm that told me he had spent years in kitchens. I ordered what the woman in front of me had ordered because she looked like she trusted the place more than I did. When he handed me the plate, he smiled. "First time?" he asked. "How can you tell?" "You are looking at it like you are about to study it." I laughed. "I analyze things for a living." He nodded toward the fork. "This one is better understood directly." That made me laugh again, and I noticed it because I had not done that easily with a stranger in a long time. The food was excellent. I went back the next Saturday, then the next. By the 4th visit, he started my order before I reached the counter. By the 5th, he sat with his own plate across from me after his lunch rush slowed. "If you are going to keep eating here," he said, "I should know your name." "Celeste." "Andre," he said, even though I already knew. He did not ask invasive questions. He did not push for my history. He listened. He answered directly. He paid attention. He was the kind of man who seemed comfortable with himself, which meant he did not need to fill silence to prove he existed. Weeks later, when I told him I had a son, he nodded once. "Miles," he said, "you mention him all the time." I blinked. "Do I?" He smiled. "Yes." The first time Andre met Miles was over lunch. Miles studied him with the seriousness only children can bring to new adults. After about 20 minutes and a full plate of macaroni and cheese, he looked at me and gave his assessment. "He is okay." Andre accepted that judgment with dignity. That helped. When Dorothy met him, she was polite, observant, and impossible to impress cheaply. After he left that evening, she rinsed her cup, set it in the dish rack, and said, "He chews with his mouth closed, and he looked at Miles before he looked at his phone." I smiled. "That is your review?" "That is a strong start," she said. Things with Andre moved slowly. That was one of the reasons I trusted them. He never tried to step into a role I had not offered. He never treated my independence as distance he needed to conquer. He respected the shape of the life I had built before him, and that mattered more than charm ever could. By then, my mother and I had reached a careful kind of peace. Not closeness, not repair in full. just a limited honesty that held. She saw Miles occasionally. She knew better than to ask for more than I was willing to give. I no longer needed her to become a different mother in order for me to move forward. I only needed clear boundaries and consistent behavior. Candace remained absent. I did not chase explanations. I did not ask for apologies. I did not need either one to continue. A year and a half after I arrived in Atlanta, we went to Piedmont Park on a mild Saturday afternoon. Dorothy packed sandwiches and insisted on making lemonade herself because, according to her, bottled lemonade was lazy and disappointing. We spread a blanket under a wide oak tree. Dorothy brought a folding chair because she considered sitting on the ground an avoidable mistake. Miles ran from one thing to the next with the easy joy of a child who trusts his surroundings. Andre followed him at a reasonable distance, never too close, never inattentive. At one point, Miles came back carrying a stick and asking questions too fast to separate. Andre listened to all of them anyway. Then he crouched down and said, "Do you want to see the park from higher up?" Miles narrowed his eyes. "How high?" Andre turned slightly and tapped his shoulder. "Shoulder high." Miles climbed up with total confidence. Andre stood carefully, one hand steadying his legs, and walked across the grass while Miles pointed at everything he could see from his new height. A dog near the path, a red kite above the field, a man in a bright shirt throwing a ball. Everything mattered to him, so Andre treated everything like it mattered. Dorothy handed me a paper cup of lemonade. I took it and watched them. For a long time, I thought rebuilding would mean finding a way back to the woman I had been before the betrayal. That is not what happened. I did not go back. I went forward. I built from the ground up with whatever was still solid. My work, my judgment, my son, Dorothy's loyalty, my own discipline, time used well, care given consistently, good decisions repeated until they became a life. I did not get here because someone rescued me. I got here because I moved carefully when my world broke, because I refused to hand my future back to people who had already shown me who they were, and because I kept building even when the early stages felt small and plain. My name is Celeste. I am 30 years old now. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, with my son, and with a woman who chose to stand beside us when it mattered most. I share my life with a man who understands that love is not control, not performance, and not possession. It is attention. It is consistency. It is care that can survive ordinary days. I am not here to say pain made me better. Pain made things harder. What changed my life was what I did after it. I protected my son. I told the truth. I made decisions I could respect later. I built a life that fits me honestly. And when I sit on a blanket in the park watching my child laugh from the safe height of someone's shoulders, with Dorothy beside me and no fear waiting at home, I know this much for certain. What I have now is not perfect. It is better. Because it is real.